The reports coming out of the Eagles building about Jalen Hurts and the coaching staff have set the internet on fire. So let's break down what happened between Hurts and the Eagles coaches and why this situation has gone from a quiet concern to a full-blown controversy. With 43 seconds left in a wild-card playoff game against the San Francisco 49ers, offensive coordinator Kevin Patullo fiddled with his red pen, scanning the play sheet. Quarterback Jalen Hurts stood in front of him, leaning in to speak to his play caller. Coach Nick Sirianni was nearby, listening to the chatter. The cameras were locked on them. Millions of Eagles fans were watching from home. Patullo addressed Hurts and Sirianni directly, suggesting what appeared to be a play call for a game-deciding fourth down. Sirianni made eye contact with Patullo, then looked at Hurts as if he was open to input. A brief deliberation resulted in the simplest of football plans, a play known as 4 verts, which the Eagles had just run on the previous play. Let that sit for a second, the same play, back-to-back, with the season on the line. But this time, the 49ers were all over it, with 3 defenders collapsing on tight end Dallas Goedert over the middle for a failed attempt. Season over just like that. Now here's the part that sent shockwaves through Eagles Nation. As one team source recalled, Hurts was the one who recommended 4 verts. A separate source with knowledge of the situation says that though the Eagles quarterback did suggest it, he was simply responding to a question about his preferences. For weeks, the narrative was that Kevin Patullo made the call, but it turns out Hurts himself was the one who recommended 4 verts. Either way, not everyone with the offense was thrilled. I was like, oh my God, this is not happening. The team source said, we can't run 4 verts. Though it's unclear what other plays were considered, if any, Sirianni ultimately approved Hurts' suggestion. Within seconds, the plan and a premature offseason vacation was in motion. The Fox cameras captured Hurts and Sirianni on the sideline during the exchange, and what viewers saw was telling. Offensive coordinator Kevin Patullo was talking to Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni about what they would do. Both the quarterback and head coach appeared to be in disbelief, as they knew it was all over. You can see the exact moment Hurts and Sirianni know the season's over. One X account said. That footage went everywhere. Social media accounts posted it with millions of views. But what people didn't know at the time was what was happening beneath the surface. A simmering tension that had been building for months, and in some ways for years. The 4 verts play wasn't just a bad call, it was a symptom, and the bombshell report that followed blew the whole thing wide open. On April 1st, 2026, ESPN's Tim McManus and Jeremy Fowler dropped a long-form investigation into the Philadelphia Eagles that peeled back every layer of dysfunction surrounding the franchise quarterback and the coaching staff. This wasn't speculation from anonymous Twitter accounts or hot-take merchants on morning sports shows. This isn't speculation from outside voices. These are people inside the NovaCare complex speaking on condition of anonymity to 2 of the most respected reporters covering the NFL. The central thesis was devastating for Hurts supporters. According to McManus and Fowler, Hurts has had a hand in the offense becoming calcified, according to several team sources who spoke to ESPN on condition of anonymity. He has pushed back on changes that would diversify the scheme, sources said, including when it comes to him going under center more. The word calcified paints a vivid picture, an offense that had hardened, become inflexible, rigid to the point of brittleness. And the sources were pointing the finger squarely at the quarterback as a significant contributing factor. The report went further, detailing the specific areas where Hurts resisted his coaches. Hurts reportedly has rigid preferences that inhibited the evolution of Philly's offense. ESPN reports that Hurts pushed back on changes the coaching staff attempted to employ, such as going under center more. In fact, playing under center is something Hurts continually fights inside the building, as he doesn't want to turn his back to the defense. That last detail is critical. Playing under center is fundamental to many of the NFL's most prolific offenses. It's a staple of the Kyle Shanahan system, the Sean McVay system, and just about every scheme that maximizes play-action effectiveness. Hurts didn't want to do it. He didn't want to turn his back to the defense. So instead, the Eagles operated overwhelmingly out of shotgun, which limited the types of run plays, play-action concepts, and misdirection looks that coordinators could deploy. Then came the part about play changing at the line of scrimmage. Sources also said Hurts changed plays at the line more than some coaches liked. One source said you never know what play is coming out of the huddle. Now, plenty of elite quarterbacks audible at the line. That's standard operating procedure for someone like Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen. But the distinction here is that Hurts wasn't just reading the defense and adjusting. He was fundamentally overriding the game plan to a degree that created confusion and unpredictability within his own offense. His teammates didn't always know what was coming. And the locker room noticed. A team source delivered one of the most damning quotes of the entire piece to ESPN. Poor body language, not always bought in, not the most coachable, and the players notice. That single sentence landed like a grenade in the middle of the Eagles' offseason. For Wednesday's lengthy article, ESPN's Tim McManus and Jeremy Fowler detailed how Hurts' personality traits that rubbed people the wrong way before had grown since the championship win. In other words, the behaviors weren't new. They just intensified after Hurts reached the mountaintop, winning a Super Bowl, being crowned MVP, signing a $255 million extension. Instead of creating humility and hunger to keep evolving, some within the building felt it entrenched, the very patterns that needed to change. The timing of the report itself raised plenty of eyebrows across the league. NFL insider Mike Florio believes there's more to it. In a recent column, he questioned the article's timing, stating that it wasn't coincidental and that it clearly came from the organization. Specifically, why did the story drop at 6 a.m. ET on the morning after most of the league left the league meetings in Arizona? Florio wasn't alone in connecting those dots. Many observers speculated that the Eagles themselves were complicit in allowing or even facilitating the release of this information, deliberately timed to avoid a media frenzy at the league meetings, while still sending a powerful message. Florio thinks the Eagles are sending Hurts a message. They want him to fall in line, otherwise he could be on the move before his deal expires in 2028. And when you consider that Hurts' deal includes a no-trade clause but doesn't have any guaranteed money after 2026, the leverage picture starts to shift in the organization's favor. The tension between Hurts and his coaches didn't start with Kevin Patullo. It stretches back further than most realize, all the way to the 2024 Super Bowl winning season. A season that, despite its triumphant ending, was marked by internal battles over offensive philosophy. Hurts pushing back against the coaching staff was not just a problem during the brief Patullo era. ESPN sources described the relationship between Hurts and former Eagles offensive coordinator Kellen Moore as tense at times. In 2024, Moore tried to implement new offensive concepts, such as motions and shifts that Hurts was slow to embrace. Even if Hurts did experiment with these wrinkles, he was quick to abandon them if he wanted to. Now, consider the context. Moore came to Philadelphia with a reputation as one of the brightest young offensive minds in the NFL. He had coordinated the Dallas Cowboys' top-ranked offense, and the Eagles hired him to bring creativity, movement, and modernization to the attack. But according to the report, Hurts' reluctance to fully commit to those concepts dulled their effectiveness. The numbers tell the story in stark fashion. The report details friction between Hurts and Kellen Moore in 2024 over motions and shifts, the same concepts Moore ran far more frequently after leaving for New Orleans. Moore's Saints ran 373 motion plays, 6th in the NFL, compared to the Eagles' 237 under Patullo, 26. That gap is enormous. Moore left Philadelphia and immediately unleashed the playbook he wanted to use in Philly, but couldn't fully install. Because of his quarterback's preferences, it's a damning indictment, not necessarily of Hurts' talent, but of his willingness to surrender control. When the 2025 season arrived, things got measurably worse. To say the Philadelphia Eagles' mission to defend their Super Bowl rings came up short in 2025 is an understatement. While the Eagles clinched the NFC East for the second consecutive season, the offense massively regressed. The numbers were ugly across the board. Hurts' 7.1 yards per attempt in 2025 marked a career low, and his 64.8% completion percentage was his worst mark in 4 years. The reigning Super Bowl MVP became the only quarterback in the past 45 seasons to go 0 of 7 passing, or worse, in the second half of a game twice in a single season. The dual-threat athlete also set a career low in carries with 105 and rushed for 421 yards, which were his fewest since Hurts' first season as a full-time starter in 2021. Meanwhile, the weapons around Hurts suffered as well. Running back Saquon Barkley did not look like the reigning Offensive Player of the Year, rushing for 865 fewer yards and 6 fewer touchdowns in the same number of games, while Brown's 1,003 yards receiving were his fewest since joining the Eagles in 2022. The offense that was supposed to be the most dominant unit in football had become one of the league's least efficient. The Eagles finished the year ranked 25th in total offense, 28th in passing yards per game, and 29th on third down. Former NFL running back LaShawn McCoy, who played for the Eagles and still has deep connections inside the building, went public with what he'd been hearing. He said on his show, Speakeasy, "I did a lot of digging, man, and I don't want to throw him under the bus here, but I know some people, and the problem is, the Eagles can't do different, exotic looks, different formations, different motions, because I'm hearing that he can't really do it." McCoy wasn't the only former player weighing in. The frustrations were spilling out of the NovaCare complex and onto every media platform imaginable. And at the center of it all was a quarterback who, according to multiple sources, needed a different kind of coach, one who wouldn't defer to his preferences. The rift between Hurts and the Eagles coaching staff was just one strand of a much larger web of strained relationships. And perhaps no relationship frayed more visibly than the one between Hurts and star wide receiver A.J. Brown. Some of that growing frustration in 2025 was directed at Hurts, team sources said, including by Brown, whose long-standing relationship with the quarterback has been tested over their 4 years in Philadelphia. Brown's frustration wasn't exactly a secret. He expressed it publicly, repeatedly, and without apology. In the middle of the season on a live stream, he described the campaign as a shit show and encouraged fantasy football owners to get rid of him. What was surprising is that Brown didn't come close to apologizing for these remarks when asked about them by reporters. But the Brown-Hurts rift went beyond public outbursts. Sources said his relationship with Hurts faced strain during the season. While both stayed professional, communication did not always flow. "There's a difference between being friends and being teammates," one source said. "They weren't always on the same page. It got physical too, at least in terms of intensity." To end the season, Brown had to be held back from attacking Nick Sirianni. Brown was not in the Eagles' locker room when the players came to clean out their belongings. He didn't show up to discuss anything, having snubbed the media the night before. That's the action of someone who had mentally checked out of the building entirely. Even Devonta Smith, the quieter and more reserved of the Eagles' two-star receivers, harbored frustrations. If Brown is playing elsewhere in 2026, Smith becomes the primary receiver. And, like Brown, Smith had his own frustrations last season. Mainly, a source with knowledge of the situation said, the lack of layup plays in the offense. Every catch, every play is grinded out. The receivers have to win, the source said. But Smith handles his frustrations differently than Brown. He's more of a side conversation guy, the source said. And then there was the relationship that undergirds everything. The one between Hurts and head coach Nick Sirianni. Their dynamic has been a storyline in Philadelphia since the 2023 season, when ESPN reported a prolonged strain between the two. With one source describing the relationship as fractured, ESPN spoke with several sources who detailed a prolonged strain between Hurts and Sirianni during the 2023 campaign, with one source with direct knowledge of the dynamic describing the relationship as fractured and unhealthy last season. At the root of the divide, a disconnect in offensive visions, with what a team source described as a lack of full respect for Sirianni's X's and O's chops. They appeared to patch things up during the 2024 Super Bowl run. Winning never hurts, and the Eagles did a lot of that in 2024. They won 14 games in the regular season and 4 more in the playoffs, capping off the magical season with a blowout win over the Chiefs in Super Bowl licks. But the underlying tensions were never fully resolved. They were simply papered over by unprecedented on-field success. When the winning stopped in 2025, the cracks reappeared, wider and deeper than ever. Even the way Hurts spoke publicly about Sirianni carried coded messaging. After the NFC Championship game in the 2024 season, Hurts was asked what it had been like playing for Sirianni. He replied, "He's done a great job, done a great job." Then, he added, "I guess he let me out of my straitjacket a little bit today." Straitjacket. That's not a word a quarterback uses to describe his coach's system, unless he feels confined, limited, held back. And it came in the glow of a championship victory. There have been efforts by key figures in the building over the past 2 seasons to get Hurts to open up. A league source confirmed that Graham and Chief Security Officer Dom DeSandro visited Hurts during the team's bye week in 2024 to emphasize that the QB needed to do a better job of connecting with his teammates and coaches, a meeting both Hurts and Graham denied at the time when Fox Sports first reported it. The fact that such a meeting even took place speaks volumes about the concerns that existed behind closed doors. So where does this leave the Philadelphia Eagles and their franchise quarterback heading into 2026? The answer depends entirely on one person, Jalen Hurts. and whether he's willing to do the one thing multiple sources suggest he has struggled with throughout his career: change. The Eagles went through a highly publicized offensive coordinator search, but they didn't land a big fish like Mike McDaniel or Brian Daboll. It's Sean Mannion who will be the Eagles' new play caller in 2026. Mannion is a former NFL quarterback who was a third-round pick back in 2015 and is a 33-year-old assistant who has been coaching for just 2 years. He most recently served as the quarterback's coach for the Green Bay Packers and has never called plays. On paper, hiring a 33-year-old coordinator with zero play-calling experience seems like an odd fit for a team with Super Bowl aspirations, but the choice of Mannion signals something deliberate. What's fascinating about the Mannion fit is that he will reportedly be implementing a system that resembles what Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan run. That means more elements of motion and play action from under center, which Hurts has previously been uncomfortable with. This is the organization essentially calling Hurts' bluff. They're installing the very system he's pushed back against for years. Mannion is expected to lead the most dramatic overhaul of the offensive system since Sirianni became head coach in 2021, according to McManus and Fowler. The question now is whether Mannion has the authority to push a franchise quarterback backed by ownership. An ESPN source close to Hurts said the quarterback needs coaches who will check him and go against the yes people around him. That will be part of Mannion's job. There are reasons for cautious optimism. One team source says Hurts is as open as he's ever been to changes, and Sirianni, for his part, continues to publicly stand by his quarterback. Sirianni said, again, "I love Jalen Hurts. I love everything that he brings to the table." If there is a bigger public advocate for Hurts than Sirianni, it's Eagles CEO Jeffrey Lurie, who gave him a 5-year, $255 million contract extension in April 2023. There is little guaranteed money left in Hurts' deal after the 2026 season. That financial reality is the elephant in every room at the NovaCare complex. The Eagles have no plans to extend Hurts this offseason. NFL sources said Hurts has 3 more years on his contract, but the important thing is that the 2026 season is his last fully guaranteed year, with $51.5 million coming in, with the remaining $22 million coming in 2027. Not everyone, however, is buying into the narrative that Hurts is the villain of this story. Former NFL quarterback Robert Griffin III offered a blunt defense. He tweeted, "Jalen Hurts is one of the most underappreciated winners in the NFL, and one of the most disrespected Super Bowl MVPs ever. The Jalen Hurts hit pieces are getting out of hand and ridiculous. And RGYI has a point. Hurts has compiled a 64.7 winning percentage, 57 to -25 25 as a starter. Hurts has a strong record and a Super Bowl MVP on his resume. You don't stumble your way to those numbers. You don't accidentally win a Super Bowl and get named Most Valuable Player." Former Eagles head coach Doug Peterson, the man who drafted Hurts, recently spoke about what he saw in the young quarterback from the start. "We drafted Jalen Hurts for a reason," Peterson said. "And we saw something in Jalen Hurts that we felt like he was going to be the starter at some point. He was going to be in the franchise at some point. But the NFL doesn't wait for anyone." The Eagles have always been vocal supporters of their quarterback. But this isn't the first time a team has done something similar. It happened to Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers, and it could happen to him now. Super Bowl winner or not, Hurts hasn't taken the leap that would otherwise justify some of the complex dynamics he's been at the center of recently. This is a very frustrating conversation to have, especially when Hurts has been a Pro Bowler 3 times, has been to 2 Super Bowls, has won 1 title, and has won a Super Bowl MVP. The reality is that while Eagles fans might hate it, this is starting to get more real than it ever has been. So let's hope for a Hurts comeback story in 2026. The scheme change undertaking promises to be the most involved of Hurts' professional career and will serve as the latest, most significant test of his adaptability and willingness to grow. Hurts now enters another season with a new offensive coordinator in Sean Mannion, the 6th one Hurts has had in what will be his 7th season. 6 coordinators in 7 years. At some point, the common denominator in the equation becomes impossible to ignore. Even if that common denominator has a Super Bowl ring, the footage from that wild-card loss, the sideline huddle, the look in Sirianni's eyes, the decision to run 4 verts, will live on as one of the defining images of the Hurts era in Philadelphia. Whether it's the image that bookends his time as an Eagle, or the one that sparks a transformation remains to be seen. But one thing is clear, The Eagles have drawn a line, and in 2026, Jalen Hurts will either cross it or find himself on the wrong side of it.